of a brain tumour at that time, and how bravely she fought through that, which must have been a terrifying thing for a young woman and a young mother. But she fought back, she came back. I'm not quite sure what they put in your brain to replace the tumour, but she came back even more energetic and enthused than ever to fight the good fight in this city. And of course, she went on to become a leader of this council in December 2016. But what a baptism of fire she faced. Not only did Triborough collapse because Hammersmith and Fulham no longer wanted to be part of it, I think that's the most polite way I could put it, but also the tragedies of the London Bridge attack and also Grenfell, where we provided such important support. And Nikki guided and led this council's response throughout all of that, and indeed to all the citizens of Westminster. And of course then she went on to become a Member of Parliament and leading also there and fighting for our citizens. But ultimately, I think her first love and her first DNA that goes through her is her council work here in Westminster. She understands the importance of what a Westminster councillor can do and the importance of local democracy. As leader, her priorities of leader of this council were the root and branch review of planning reform, the voluntary contribution for those people in Band H, which raised over £1 million, money that has been invested in services for the young, for those facing social isolation, the older people, and also rough sleeping services, and a model that has been followed throughout many other councils. And of course, also, it was Nikki who, as leader, implemented our major implementation of new homes building, particularly Ebury Bridge, which we kicked off together and made that vital commitment that we would see it through. But I think if I were to speak for Nikki, I think maybe one of the things that's most important about Nikki and why she is so well suited to do this is because of her understanding and respect for the importance and the significance of the work that we do here, the importance of our role as local councillors and local democracy. She was very proud to be the second of 3 consecutive female leaders of the council, perhaps an idea that the Labour Party could even consider one day. And it was also Nikki who introduced the idea that we should have a cross-party involvement in the mayoralty. Up until that point, it had been thought by some on our side that perhaps some Labour councillors would find it too difficult to give up their party political allegiances. I can't believe where they got that idea from. Can you, Lord Mayor?
Absolutely not.
Extraordinary, extraordinary. But it was Nikki who did that because she understood the importance of the mayoralty. So I can't think of anyone who has done more for Westminster or who deserves this honour more than Nikki, and I'm delighted and very proud to nominate her for the role.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I now call Councillor Adam Hugg to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm delighted to be able to be here to second the motion to appoint Nikki Aken as an honorary alderman of this council. Nikki is someone who I served with here in Westminster for 12 years, and though we were from different parties, was very much someone I grew to respect as someone who shared a deep commitment to this city. The genesis for Nikki's investiture came from the idea, shared by both parties, to thank both Nikki and Karen Buck for their service to the city, both on the council and in Parliament after last year's election. And while Karen ultimately decided against it, being a dame, being considered quite grand enough for her right now, we were pleased to be able to proceed with this opportunity to thank Nikki for her years of public service. When she served as Cabinet Member for Children's Services and as Cabinet Member for Public Protection, both Karen and I remember her genuine commitment and real interest and passion for tackling issues around serious youth violence that dogged the local communities in the wards that we represented. We know that she fought very hard to create the Young Westminster Foundation, which stands as a lasting legacy. And she went out of her way as a Cabinet Member to bring both Councillor McAllister and I into the work of the Community Cohesion Commission that she ran As leader of the council from 2016 to 2020, she was a doughty advocate for her brand of politics, a robust form of one nation conservatism, a fierce campaigner during the turbulent Brexit years. As the leader of the opposition at that time, our disagreements may have been robust, but they were mostly fair. She played a hugely important role in helping nationally get spice reclassified. She took a hands-on approach to air pollution, I'm told leaning into taxi windows to ask drivers to turn off their engines as part of the Don't Be Idle campaign. And amid some prodding from this side of the aisle, she recognised the challenge that climate change posed to this city and this country by declaring the council's climate emergency. And she also took, as Councillor Robertson alluded to, the long overdue but previously resisted efforts to reform the council's approach to planning. But one of the main reasons, as also Rachel alluded to, why we're conferring the civic honour tonight is because of the changes that Nikki made to the civic life of our city. She took the decision to open up the council's whole civic function to the entirety of the council for the first time. She did this by enabling the first ever member of the minority party to be appointed as Lord Mayor when she appointed Councillor Ruth Bush back in May 2019. And also, she took the opportunity to appoint Councillor Barry Taylor and Councillor Barbara Graham as honorary aldermen. And although she only served one term as the MP for Cities of London and Westminster, she served her community actively during the pandemic. Her campaigning role to help overturn the outdated Vagrancy Act was listened to by the government at the time in its initial role back in 2022, work that is now being completed this year. And her work in Parliament pushing the case for regulation of pedicabs played a central role in the passage of the necessary legislation that is now enabling TfL to regulate the trade. Nikki gave 18 years of her life to public service to the City of Westminster, and on behalf of the City Council, I think it is important that we recognise that. So I second this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hugg. I shall now put the motion, as set out on the agenda, to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? I declare the motion carried. Congratulations, Nikki. Congratulations. That completes the business of this extraordinary council meeting. There will be an opportunity for future speeches at a reception to be arranged for a later date. I therefore declare the extraordinary council meeting closed. You're perfectly entitled to stay, but you may well have better things to do. Thank you. We now move to the business of the ordinary council meeting. As this will be a busy meeting, I would like to remind members to be as succinct as possible in their speeches and questions so that we can cover all the items we need to. Agenda item 1, appointment of relief chair. As I may need to vacate the chair during the meeting, I propose that Councillor James Small-Edwards be chosen to take the chair as necessary. May I please have a seconder for my motion? Thank you. Councillor Imanles has seconded my motion that Councillor Small-Edwards chairs the meeting as necessary. Unless any member objects, the motion will be deemed to be carried. If anybody has an objection, please say so now. Thank you. Councillor Small-Edwards, please join me on the dais. Agenda item 2, minutes. Minutes from previous meeting. Unless any member wishes to raise a point of order relating to the accuracy of the minutes, I will consider that members are content that I sign the minutes of the last meeting. Please state now if you wish to raise a point of order. Thank you. The minutes are agreed, and I will sign them. Agenda item 3, Lord Mayor's communications. These are set out in the meeting papers. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. It is necessary to declare any interest in relation to the issues on which there will be a vote. These items were set out alongside a list of speakers on the order paper. Members need to declare an interest in the items selected for debate if they are speaking in that debate. All members in attendance were asked to identify in advance of the meeting if they have an interest to declare. If anyone has any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other significant interests to declare, please do so now. Thank you. Agenda item 5, there is no statement on urgent business. Agenda item 6, Councillor presented petitions. I'm not aware of any petitions. However, if anyone has one they'd like to present, please mention this now. Thank you. Agenda item 7, public participation. Each member of the public selected for this item and here this evening has submitted a question which they will present to the relevant Cabinet member. They will have up to 2 minutes to present their question. Then the relevant Cabinet member will have up to 2 minutes to respond. Can I ask that when you are presenting your question, you adhere to the question you submitted, which you have a copy of? Can I also ask the Cabinet members who are responding to be succinct in their responses? There will be no right of reply, and I ask that once you have received your response, you return to your seat. All questions asked and responses provided will be made available on the Council's website in the days after the meeting. Can I ask Yasmin Patel to join us at the front of the chamber to present their petition? Welcome, Yasmin.
Hi everyone. I am presenting this on behalf of the parents and local residents who signed this petition. This merger creates a significant reduction of 200 school places in Westminster and future loss of primary school places in St John's Wood. The concerns raised by the parents are that we were not given sufficient time, information and resources to fully understand and respond intelligently to the consultation which ran from the 24th of April to the 22nd of May 2025 during school holidays. The whole process has been rushed through in only 5 months. Fairer Westminster states you want to listen to the views of the residents, and the majority of parents are opposed to this proposal. The principles of consultation include guidance that consultation must occur when the proposal is still at a stage where it can be meaningfully influenced by feedback. We don't feel there is evidence that any of our feedback has been taken into consideration. The key driver for this decision is the large deficit at Robbinsfield Infant School. No evidence has been provided of the deficit reduction planning for Robbinsfield. We are concerned the same senior leadership team who oversaw the decline are still in place to take this forward. They will have a larger budget and a bigger headcount as one new school. What safeguards are in place to prevent a future deficit, bearing in mind the current team had extra support over the last 2 years? We still see no evidence of a financial impact assessment. There are no detailed plans shared for the future of the school buildings to make them fit for purpose. Parents still do not know the staffing structure for next year or key term dates. How will you prevent any future loss in pupil numbers caused directly by this instability and uncertainty? What extra teaching provision can be put in place in each classroom to support the 500 children and families affected right now? Surely Fairer Westminster means working together. So how can we move forward in a positive way as a community with the schools to ensure a successful transition? Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin. I now ask Cabinet Member for Children and Public Protection, Councillor Aisha Less, to respond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and good evening. And thank you, Yasmin, and thank you for coming along tonight. I know we've already had a lot of contact about this issue, and you've spoken with council officers, the school governors and your local MP. You have already received a written response from us which addresses each of these points in the petition. I hope this was helpful. Amalgamating or closing schools is not an easy decision for us to make. And after a long consultation period, the decision was made because pupil numbers in St John's Wood are falling. Schools are funded on a per pupil basis by the government, so if pupil numbers keep going down, they're not sustainable. Some schools do get extra funding, like very rural schools, to ensure they can serve local communities, but schools in inner London cities don't receive anything. We're not alone in this challenge. You will have seen school closures in other boroughs like Islington and Hackney. As a council, we have a statutory duty to ensure that schools are set in a balanced budget. We work closely with our schools to produce a deficit plan if they're unable to do so. Like I said in my written response, we are using some developer contribution funding to support the amalgamation, and we have set aside some of our high needs capital funding to ensure the sites are accessible. The double classroom model will be retained, and pupils going into Year 6 at George Eliot will stay on site for their final year for consistency. Parents who have a child at more than one site will only need to drop off at one site. So they will only do one drop off and one pick up at one site. The leadership across all schools are committed to making this amalgamation as smooth as possible. And I want to emphasise, this doesn't need to be the end of the conversation. I'm happy to keep talking to you and other parents about how the council and schools will work with you. We all want the best for your children, and I hope we can work together to ensure everything goes smoothly in September. Thank you.
Thank you. Yasmin, you can now return to your seat. Question 2. Can I now ask Joe Fernandez to join us at the front of the chamber to ask his question? Hi, Joe. Nice to see you.
How are you, sir?
Very well.
Good evening, everyone. Why has our service charges doubled since Labour took control of the council?
Thank you. I will now
You're welcome.
ask the Cabinet Member for Housing Services, Councillor Begum, to respond. Councillor Begum.
Lord Mayor, I hope you are okay with me sitting down and answering questions because I have a really bad back. So
of course.
If you permit that, thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you for raising the issue of service charges, which I know have been very challenging for many residents, particularly in light of the cost of living crisis. I firstly want to assure you that the Council is doing everything it can to keep major works bills down and service charges as low as possible. As you'll know, service charges for leaseholders can vary significantly between buildings, depending on the specific repair and maintenance needs identified each financial year. Unfortunately, there has been a substantial rise in the cost of building insurance and energy, which has affected bills across the board in recent years. Insurance premiums have nearly doubled since 2022. This is a widespread issue affecting all London boroughs, largely due to a sharp reduction in the number of insurers willing to cover local authority housing. In response, the London Leasehold Officers Forum, of which Westminster City Council is a member, is actively engaging with the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government to explore potential solutions to help bring down bills. The war in Ukraine also triggered a significant spike in energy prices, which always have a huge impact on the cost of major works. Our residents have sadly experienced increases of over 50% in heating and energy costs, and this impact has been felt across all London councils as well. I'm glad to see some energy tariffs are reducing, and reductions will be passed on to residents when the service charges are next reviewed. Despite these global and market-wide factors, we are working hard to ensure value for money for our residents and have increased the support available to residents who are facing financial difficulties. We offer extensive support for our residents through our cost of living programme, with a total of 26 million committed to residents facing financial hardship. As part of this, we offer free financial and energy advice to our residents through our partnership with organisations such as the Citizens Advice Bureau and Green Doctors. For leaseholders specifically, we recently announced new major works repayment plans, which are some of the most generous in London, with several options, including those with 8-year interest-free periods for those facing large service charge bills. We will continue to do what we can to keep service charge bills as low as possible and support residents who are struggling with the cost of living. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you repeat that?
You can now return to your seat. Thank you very much. Question 3. Can I ask Perpetua Manjana to join us at the front of the chamber to ask their question? Welcome.
Could consideration please be made to either increase adult social care funding or to bring back supporting people funding for older people within social housing? Since the supporting people funding was withdrawn, we're seeing a gap where social landlords do not provide support, but they refer the tenants to adult social care who are struggling to cope. This leaves a lot of vulnerable tenants with insufficient or no care in the community. This lack of adequate funding for adult social care also means more elderly people are left to fend for themselves in the community, when they could be either in care homes or provided with support within social housing. Inadequate funding for adult social care sector is putting lives at risk.
Thank you. I now ask the Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, Public Health and Voluntary Sector, Councillor Butler-Thalassis, to respond.
Thank you, Perpetua, for your question and for coming to full council tonight. I'm sure we would all like to see more funding for adult social care. Funding for adult social care has been reduced over the last 15 years, and we would very much like to see it increase. However, I would like to reassure you that in Westminster, adult social care services are very good. We were recently assessed by CQC and given a rating of good with a score of 75%, which is currently the second highest in London and the third highest in the country. The Supporting People programme that you're referring to was introduced by central government back in 2003 as £1.8 billion ring-fence grant to local authorities intended to fund services to help vulnerable people live independently. Those services included providing house-related support for older people, people with disabilities, and those at risk of homelessness. This programme no longer exists, but I can assure you that lots of the services the grant used to fund do still exist under different names. In Westminster, people aged over 60 with a housing need are able to access community supportive housing where they receive support from a scheme manager. This type of housing has the shortest waiting list of any other type of social housing. People with higher needs are able to access extra care housing, which is housing with care provided in-house when people need it. I'm very proud that 65 extra care flats are currently being built in Maida Vale and are due to house new tenants by March. And of course, care is provided to people who need it in their homes, wherever they live. Our staff work hard to assess anyone to refer to adult social care in a timely and safe manner, and we are proud that we have no waiting list for assessment. But if you know someone who is not receiving the care they need, please let me know the details separately. Over the last few years, the Council has invested significantly in adult social care services. We have increased the rate paid to people delivering care and made sure that fewer people have to pay for their care. Thank you again for your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Perpetua. You may now return to your seats. There's no question 4 because the person who's going to ask it has not been able to be here. So question 5, can I ask Simon Webb to join us at the front of the chamber to ask their question?
bring my son.
Please do. Good evening, Simon.
Good evening. First of all, thank you for listening, and well done about improving cross Westminster Borough cycle routes, for example, the George Street scheme, so thank you for that. But please could there be a talk with the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea about safer cycling routes to schools, particularly under the by-borough arrangements where many children have to travel between the two. And my son Charles was travelling to his college over at St Charles and was pushed into the canal while on his bike, with his bike, by a pedestrian because he was trying an alternate route, and that was a risky thing because he was not a swimmer. Improving the C27 route to reach secondary schools safely would help. For example, there's no traffic light to cross the busy Ladbroke Grove in the mornings. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I now ask the Cabinet Member for Streets, Councillor Sullivan, to respond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And thank you so much, Mr Webb, to you and your son for coming tonight to ask your question. And as this is my first time answering a public participation question, can I just say how glad I am that this Labour administration introduced this opportunity for the public to ask questions directly to the council in full view of the public, which I think is a really welcome change, that we've been that open to questions and scrutiny. I'm also really sorry, Mr Webb, to hear about the incident you mentioned on the canal, which is really unacceptable. So I'm very, very sorry to hear of that. Thank you for your positive comments about our work on Cross Westminster cycle routes. We're working hard to bring those to delivery, and I'll hold your congratulations until we've actually got it built and it can really make a difference to everyone in Westminster and beyond. In terms of C27, you're absolutely right. It's a legacy piece of infrastructure which is not really fit for modern standards. It doesn't feel comfortable or safe to cycle on. If you're less confident, it takes a great deal of confidence to engage with that cycle route as it is. It feels quite dangerous. It crosses my ward and I use it regularly, but it's no longer fit for purpose. There are over 1,500 Westminster residents use schools in RBKC and 400 in Kensington and Chelsea that come the other way. So there is a large number of school children travelling every day across our border. And I will take your question and pose it to the Cabinet Member at RBKC to see what we can do to improve the legacy infrastructure of Cycleway 27. So I will do that. I think credit to where it's due, they have put some measures in place. I do want to say that they have done that. They've done some work, but clearly a lot more needs to be done to make cycling feel safe for people in Westminster and in rural borough of Kensington and Chelsea. Just to say on the issue of schools, because I represent a ward which shares a boundary with RBKC, and I'm very glad to see that they have finally agreed to introduce a school street on Pembridge Square. School streets are really important, and we're also rolling them out rapidly. So I will also, in my letter to my counterpart, encourage them to do more around school streets to ensure safe travel for children and their parents and their carers. Thank you very much for your question. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon and Son. And finally, can I ask Pooja Gupta to join us at the front of the chamber to ask their question? Hello.
Good evening, everyone. My question is, are there any preferences in new housing developments happening in the council for residents who have been working and staying in the council for a long time and would like to buy a house here but are not necessarily eligible for any government schemes like affordable housing or shared ownership?
Thank you. Please stay. Can I now ask the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Renters, Councillor Ormsby, to respond?
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much for raising this question with me. It is absolutely an important issue because tackling Westminster's housing crisis is one of the top priorities of this council, and as well as making sure we build as many new, particularly affordable homes as we can, we are also doing everything we can to ensure that local residents are prioritised for new housing development opportunities wherever possible. On the specific question of prioritising local residents who aren't eligible for affordable housing schemes, when it comes to new market sales, Unfortunately, the council has very limited powers. That being said, we do everything we can to ensure Westminster residents get access to these opportunities first. In fact, this administration has made sure that all of our recent schemes are marketed with a local first approach. So at both the large developments at Ebury and Church Street, we have long periods where homes are only marketed domestically. Where we have 2 offers on the same home, we prioritise the UK offer. To make sure we are reaching Westminster residents specifically, we ensure that the vast majority of marketing activity takes place near the site location. Existing blocks of flats and new developments nearby are targeted with mail drops advertising the new homes to capture interest from the existing local community. However, the council does have much more control when it comes to delivering affordable housing, and we are taking steps to ensure we prioritise long-term Westminster tenants. When our new build or regenerated social housing is ready to let, alongside the right to return for existing residents, we implement local letting plans, which prioritise local residents for these new homes, typically with a focus on those impacted most by the works. We also work closely with a number of registered providers to promote intermediate housing opportunities for Westminster residents, and these opportunities are shared on the Homes for Westminster website. Across all of our housing developments, we are working to prioritise the needs of Westminster residents. So where possible, as your question alluded to, people can continue to remain in the communities that they have built a life in and contributed to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ormsby. Pooja, you may now return to your seat. That was the last question in this item. Thank you all for taking time to participate tonight. If you'd like to stay for the remainder of the meeting, you're more than welcome and can make your way to the public gallery. But if you are leaving us now, I wish you a good evening and thank you again for your attendance. Thank you. Agenda item 8, questions. There are 45 minutes for questions. Will all members wishing to ask a question please indicate now and continue doing so until your request has been noted by the Chief Executive and the Executive Director of Corporate Services. Please remember that questions may be asked of a Cabinet Member or a Committee Chair. I will call members who indicated that they wish to ask a question after Councillor Swaddle has asked his 3 questions. Questions and responses should be brief. Have we got? Okay. Councillor Swaddle, please now ask the first of your 3 questions.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My first question is to Councillor Sullivan. Welcome him to answering questions for the public. You can answer mine now. Max, what have you specifically done since being appointed to tackle the problem with dockless hire bikes in the borough?
Thank you for the question. I'm honoured to get the question rather than the leader. That's a novel approach. I didn't just start action when I was appointed to the Cabinet Member. As you know, I've been Deputy Cabinet Member since May 2022, and in fact it's by working closely with the now Lord Mayor that we have an extremely comprehensive network of bays across Westminster. I actually cycled here tonight on a line bike and used one of our designated bays a couple of minutes away. So the work didn't just start recently, but we are regularly talking to operators. We've signed new collaboration agreements with both Lime and Forest, which hold them to higher standards. We have about 90+% of all rides ending in bays. We need to get that higher, and we're working very hard to do that. And we are getting, like I said in previous meetings, we're getting the operators to pay for more staff, which they've done. None of that was happening under Conservative leadership of Westminster, and there were absolutely no formalised bays. So that work didn't start when I became Cabinet Member. It started when I became Deputy Cabinet Member alongside the now Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Supplementary, Lord Mayor. Although I'm not sure I understood what had been done since his appointment as a Cabinet Member.
New collaboration agreement signed. Listen to the answer.
So the cover of the Zebra magazine tells the real story of hire bikes in this city. Why is the Cabinet member not enforcing by taking bikes off the street like many boroughs and TfL are doing?
Thank you for the follow-up question. Let's just wind back. There was absolutely no enforcement done by your administration. There was absolutely no bays in place, and we were left with I'm just giving you the context. I'm just giving you the context. And as I said, over 90% of trips end in a marked bay. So yes, it needs to be higher, and yes, those incidences are absolutely unacceptable. We do have very limited highways powers as it is to remove bikes. The threshold is high. Look at the quantities of bikes that they're removing. They're removing 100 bikes at a time. Generally speaking, it's limited. So we have it, but it's limited. That's why it's an unregulated situation, and regulation needs to come along to make Highways Authority's enforcement powers stronger. In the meantime, it is unregulated. It is an unregulated market. When we have regulation in place, we'll be able to have a lower threshold for intervening. Right now, the threshold is too high. That needs changing. It does. But in the meantime, we can't sit on our hands, which is what you were doing. We've created a network of bays around the city, which has massively increased compliance. We have got the operators to pay their operatives to move bike. They move thousands of bikes every day. What did you do about it? Absolutely zilch.
Thank you. Councillor Swaddle, your second question.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Let's hope that this one's better. To the leader. The Mayor is clearly not listening to your voice on Oxford Street. The council seems to have rolled over and is no longer fighting the Mayor or standing up for residents. When did you last meet the Mayor face to face to discuss this?
1804.
So, as Councillor Swaddle is aware, we have been in active discussions with the GLA, including the Mayor, but intensively with his team and his deputy mayors around the proposed implementation of the Mayor's proposals. As set out back in February and as reported to this council, we have robustly fought for Westminster's interests so that if, as seems likely, that this proposal goes ahead, Westminster has a number of clear safeguards that were not there back last September. Most notably, the commitment that the eastern side of Oxford Street will be delivered in alignment with Westminster's original proposals and be delivered by the MDC rather than full pedestrianisation, a range of commitments on security, a commitment to freight consolidation, and a whole list of things as elucidated in February. I have spoken with the Mayor on a number of occasions and I'm running in active conversations with his team around trying to get the best for Westminster. As we've set out very clearly in our consultation response, we do not believe this was necessary or appropriate to deliver the improvements on Oxford Street that everyone wants to see, and we had a different vision of what that transformation should be. We believe that was the right approach. It is clear that the Mayor does not. But we will continue to make the case for Westminster's interests, whilst recognising the powers that the Mayor has to create an MDC.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Lord Mayor, I'm not sure my question was answered. It was a very simple question. When did you last meet the Mayor face to face to discuss this vital issue for residents in Westminster? And will you now back our calls for Westminster to look at using a judicial review to fight the Mayor?
As I said, I've met the Mayor on a number of occasions, including this spring. Obviously, we, as I said, remain in active dialogue with his team. We are very clear. We have taken legal advice throughout this, and it is clear that at present there is no obvious grounds for judicial review. We'll obviously look at the whole legal landscape and make sure that whatever is done is in compliance with the law. We are not going to take speculative runs at this, and we will be guided understanding the legal position. The point is the legal advice throughout has been clear that the Mayor has fairly broad powers to create MDCs. And as a result, we are engaging constructively to try and get the best outcome for Westminster. We are not going to throw money in willy-nilly trying to grandstand. We will look at the best way to try and safeguard the interests of the people of Westminster, whilst recognising the mayor's process that's underway and the very, very broad powers in legislation that he has to create MDCs.
Thank you. Councillor Swallow, your third question.
See if we can get an answer to any questions tonight. The question to the leader again. Does the leader understand that residents and members of the Soho Society are furious that the society has been put into financial peril due to the political ambitions of one of his candidates for May 26? Does he not think that there are clear conflicts of interest?
I'm not entirely clear what he's referring to. Ultimately, the Soho Society is a local residents group that has that is very active, and I'm not 100% sure what she's referring to.
Your supplementary, Councillor Swaddle.
Can the leader assure me that no Labour politician was involved in the decision to waive the £100,000 of council costs fighting this case to save the political ambitions of one of their fellow party members and declared candidates for Soho? Note, we will be putting an FOI in to get this information.
My belief is that all appropriate manners have been followed. This is not a matter I've been involved in. The councillor has worked, again, my limited understanding of the details of this case, recognising the pressures that a charity faces, and a clear response has been given to you already by officers.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Swaddle, for your three questions. I'm now going to call councillors to ask their question. First one is Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is to the Cabinet Member for Children and Public Protection. There is an elderly disabled man in Little Venice who has been waiting nearly 2 years for an automatic front door, and it is still far from being delivered. You state in fairer Westminster communities it aims to reduce inequality, improve safety and promote health. Do you think waiting over 2 years for an essential adaptation is fair?
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Dean. I'm unaware of this particular case, so I am personally unaware of this particular case, but I agree it is unacceptable for an elderly man to be waiting 2 years for a basic adaptation that needed to happen. If you could give me the details of that resident in particular, I will take it up. Thank you.
Supplementary.
I'm very surprised you don't know anything about this case, because my second part of this question is, I brought this case to P&S Committee on the 4th of March 2025, which you attended as one of the Cabinet members. 3 different Cabinet members are responsible for aids and adaptations and the Disabled Facilities Grant, and your department is responsible for the Disabled Facilities Grant. Do you think combining these 3 different teams into one, or at most 2, would make the process quicker and more efficient?
Can I quickly just add to that? I agree that the adaptation scheme is crazy to be between 3 departments, but it depends what type of property this elderly man lives at, because public protection leads on adaptations for leaseholders and freeholders, people that own their homes. Housing deal with adaptations for housing properties, social housing properties, and adult social care deal with elderly and disabled individuals.
But you were at the meeting,
yes,
and you were there when they said this was a leaseholder who was applying for the Disabled Facilities Grant. So you cannot say you do not know of this case when you were there, and so were you, Nurse Seeker.
So I think my department knows all about the case, and I think that you have been briefed about it several times.
Yes,
So
because it's still not...
Because it has many very complex issues about it, and solving the issues is not straightforward. But the three departments have been working closely together, but not every case can be resolved.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Iman Less.
Can I? Because
No,
of
no,
your incredulity.
Councillor. No, please. What's the point of what point of order is it? No, what point of order is it? What is the point of order? The number.
A clarification on who's allowed to answer the question.
Please sit down. Please sit down. Can I advise the councillors involved here to sort this out after the meeting, please? The elderly old man's future is at stake, so please sort it out after the meeting.
But the cabinet member...
That's the end of it, Councillor Dean. Councillor Iman Less.
Thank you. My question is also to the Head of Children and Public Protection. I'd just like to congratulate you on the CCTV rollout in Maida Vale. Ashworth Road has been used particularly to catch criminals up and down the street that are not parking properly and are not being safe. But my question is on a question around CCTV and whether it was used last week. Unfortunately, there were 2 stabbings in Paddington Rec. Luckily, they were not fatal. As I understand it, it were 2 young schoolboys. And is there any more information that can be shared?
Thank you, Councillor. I think this is the first time my daughter asks me a question at full council. So, you know, you could have asked me at home. But anyway, it's fine. It's fine. So moving on from that. So we were really deeply saddened to hear about the stabbings at Paddington Rec. And, you know, on the 17th of June, I know that officers have been in touch with both the victims and the schools around how we can work with them, and they are continuing to support all the schools, the 3 schools that are in the vicinity of Paddington Rec. We continue to work closely with them. We're also talking to local schools about hosting an open forum to discuss more about some of those concerns. I know that a lot of parents have emailed various councillors, probably on both sides of the chamber, about this incident in particular, and there is a bit of worry around safety. But I'm pleased to say that we have 50 cameras in Paddington Rec. They're run by everyone is active, and they were fully operational at the time of the incident, and we're doing everything we can to you know, to prevent incidents like this happening again. It was unfortunately it was an end of year kind of celebration between 2 schools, and 2 individuals got into a fight, and that's how the incident unfolded. But thank you very much for your question.
Thank you. Supplementary, yes. And yeah, I probably could have asked you at home, but why do that when you do it here? Supplementary, so just on the CCTV cameras in Paddington Rec, yes, we know that there are loads in Paddington Rec, but there have been reports that some of them were not working or facing the wrong direction. Can you clarify what the case is, please?
I can confirm that all the cameras were working, and I think the person that spread the rumour didn't actually know what the extent of the cameras usage was at the time, but they are definitely all working. I can't comment if the camera was facing that direction or not, because I don't have that level of detail, but I do know, I can confirm that all the cameras are working. Thank you.
Councillor Short.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Question to the Cabinet Member for Streets and Cycling. Councillor Sullivan. We have had complaints for the first time about dumping around the communal recycling bins near the Millbank Estate and on Horseferry Road, which our brilliant City Inspector Richard Moody has had to sort out. It seems it is happening because recycling bins are now locked. Can the Cabinet Member explain why the recycling bins, big black bins, lids are now locked, and is he aware of the increased dumping that is now taking place around these bins as a result?
Lord Mayor. Is this on? Oh, it is. Thank you. I'd be grateful if you should share all the details of that, and happy to get the waste and recycling team to look into the details of it, although it's great to hear that the city inspector is also on the case. The reason that the big black bins for recycling are locked is to reduce contamination, because often they are other kinds of waste are put in there. So the idea there is to force people to fold their recycling into the slots, so they see the green lid, and to reduce contamination rates, which we do in Westminster. We will have one of the better lower contamination rates within Westminster. But I'm happy to look at that practice and review how it's working. Very happy to do that. The intention is a good one, but obviously we need to make sure that it's working in practice. So I'm happy to review that and come back to you.
Would the Cabinet member share his data around dumping, please, in these locations? And if the data shows an increase, then definitely review it. I mean, you've already said you will review it. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely happy to. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eagleton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've got a question for the Leader of the Council, and it's this. The Leader of the minority group recently said about one of his councillors that they've become increasingly disengaged, missing meetings, turning up late, and stepping back from local responsibilities. Can you reassure our residents that if a councillor on this side of the chamber did anything like that, they'd be swiftly suspended by yourself from the group?
You're right, we would take swift action to make sure that any member is living up to their duties to represent the residents of Westminster, obviously why we have robust selection processes to make sure that our councillors are of the highest calibre and the candidates we for election are the right people for the job. So yes, I can absolutely give that assurance that on this side of the House we are making that commitment, and obviously it's important that all councillors meet those high standards.
Supplementary, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Leader of the Council. My supplementary is the fact that the Leader of the Minority Party turned a blind eye to this until the councillor in question decided to defect shows that he's quite willing to turn a blind eye to incompetence to protect his party's political reputation.
Let her speak for herself.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Okay,
yeah.
You've made your point. Thank you.
Extraordinary. Extraordinary. And so my supplementary is, doesn't this just show that the Leader of the Minority Party is uniquely unfit to lead this council and is a liar?
Before you sit down, Councillor Eagleton, I don't think we should be calling anybody liars, so it'd be grateful if you could withdraw that particular remark.
I'll withdraw that.
Thank you. Councillor Hugg, would you respond to the supplementary?
I think very clearly we are facing a choice at the next election between a Conservative Party that is becoming increasingly extreme, propelled by the pressure to its right from reform. Councillor Cunningham is obviously now able to, I don't think her views are going to change very much now she's in reform as to what she's been saying up until now, but obviously that was fine for the Conservatives up until the point at which she chose in her long-term interest to go to reform. I think we have a concern in Westminster about an increasingly right-wing Conservative party and the increase and the rise of reform across the country, which we have to be careful about, which is why we are committed to delivering for the people of Westminster on crime and antisocial behaviour, on supporting our communities, and we believe Labour is best placed to represent that rather than the Conservatives or reform.
Thank you. Councillor Kaplan.
My question is to Councillor Blading, Cabinet Member for Housing, and I understand the proxy constituency, that's absolutely fine. So my question is, when the Council approved the new housing allocation system, did she have officers undertake an analysis of who would benefit from the new system, and more importantly, who would lose under the new system?
Can you get close to the microphone, please?
When we did the allocations policy review, we co-produced it with our residents. So we did a lot of resident engagement through Common Place, face-to-face events in all our housing service centres, and we had
That's not the question.
we did engagement, and we received feedback from our residents on what they'd like to see in a housing allocations policy. So we did, and we also did an equalities impact assessment, as we do with all of our reviews.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Absolutely, I have a supplementary. So, can the Cabinet member advise what I should tell my constituents, the husband who has multiple sclerosis, and where there are 2 children of different sexes living in effectively a 1-bedroom flat? They were previously number 13 for a direct offer under the old system for a 3-bedroom flat. They are now finding themselves bidding at number 140. Is that a fairer Westminster?
This new allocations policy actually looks at cumulative need. So we would look at this case, and we would look at their medical need and overcrowded need. So I'd be more than happy to have a look at that particular case.
That is the facts. Your officer.
Councillor Tuzal.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can the Cabinet Member for Finance and Council Reform tell us what progress has been made to consider in-source solutions for council services?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Townsall for that question. Yes, it was only about 20 years ago, one of my predecessors, when the possibility of in-sourcing was raised after a committee meeting, one of my predecessors stated that they would never, under any circumstances, ever bring any service back in-house. And I'm happy to confirm this administration does not have ideological blinkers. And the in-sourcing framework that we introduced in January 2023 ensures an in-house delivery model is considered when it may improve services and or save money. Several in-source solutions have been adopted, most notably in-housing services, where it's helped allow services to be redesigned to make them more responsive and help relieve the temporary accommodation crisis, which has severely hit our budget. Most recently, I've agreed to in-source the IT services help desk contract from BT.
Is that why it's been not working?
Supplementary?
Will the insourcing of the IT help desk deliver improved service levels, and what will the cost be?
Thank you for the supplementary, because bringing IT technical support services in-house will mean that it is more focused on the actual needs of Westminster City Council. We won't have, the staff will not have to phone up BT to escalate responses like they used to have to before. So it's all going to be a lot quicker, a lot more responsive, but it won't cost any more, because it will actually save the council about £500,000 a year. Cheaper services, better services, that's what you get with Labour.
Thank you. Councillor Mendoza.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Question also to the Cabinet Member for Finance. What assessment has he made regarding the impact of his government's plans to impose business rates reform here in Westminster?
The Council has recently responded to the consultation on the resetting of business rates, but this consultation has been long anticipated. The previous government had actually committed to resetting the rates since at least 2017, but its habit of kicking the can down the road meant that it never actually happened. The timing may not be ideal because the final data won't be known until late 2025-26 for the next financial year. So we will have to rely on estimates. They are being worked on by the officers at the moment.
Supplementary. As a Cabinet Member for Finance, he will of course know that there are currently over 1,700 national non-domestic rates properties in Westminster with a rateable value in excess of £500,000, who do of course risk being affected by the government's legislation. He may also know that Colliers has estimated that rateable values in the West End could increase by 30% following next year's re-evaluation of rents if this bill is actually enacted. Would he therefore agree, though, with High Streets UK, who have labelled the bill a disaster for jobs, investment and growth, as it places too great a burden on our flagship high streets, and will he therefore be writing to the Chancellor of the Exchequer asking her to change course?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think this is sort of straying into national policy, and it's also straying into the area of my colleague, Councillor Barraclough, in terms of the effects on businesses. As far as we are concerned as a billing authority, we collect the rates that are billed, and then we redistribute it through the entire rest of the nation and share.
So you're not going to lobby her?
We certainly believe that we should be doing everything we can to increase the value and the profitability of business within Westminster, and we accept that, given that we have we collect more rates in Westminster than the whole of Wales, we are obviously going to have to share it out. We can't really keep it for ourselves. But the good thing in this is that we are also likely to head for a reset of the business rate retention scheme, and given that we have been safety net under that scheme for quite a long time, it actually offers us the chance of sharing in the proceeds of business rate growth in future years, which will be the first time for a long time, and we've never allowed in the previous government.
Thank you. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question to the Cabinet Member for Planning and Economic Development. As a councillor in a ward that has been affected by flooding, my question is, what is the council doing to prevent flooding, or what mechanisms are we putting in place? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, flooding is one of the most devastating things that can happen to a city, as we saw in July 2021, when hundreds of basement flats across Westminster were made uninhabitable by sewage backing up from the main drains. Look, thankfully nobody was hurt, but the emotional toll over the months and years people were out of their homes has been enormous. Look, there's no single large-scale engineering solution to the challenge of flooding. Instead, we need a layered approach, one that involves the Council, Thames Water, who I'm meeting tomorrow, the Environment Agency, developers and residents all playing a role. Because it's going to take hundreds, if not thousands, of smaller interventions to add up to meaningful protection. When it comes to flooding, every little helps. That's the thinking behind our new Westminster Flood Risk Management Strategy. What's that about? Well, we've created a new digital flood map of Westminster, so we know where to put investment, where the catchment areas of floodwater are going to be. The city plan's been updated to give new guidance for developments so they don't increase flood risk. We're reinforcing our gully maintenance programme to keep the water flowing and reduce blockages, and allocating £7.3 million to sustainable urban drainage, SUDs, and other physical flood measures. And if the worst does happen, we've established a multi-agency emergency response plan to coordinate first responders and reduce the risk of harm to life or property. So the response, if July 2021 happens again, should be better. Flooding's a shared challenge, but with shared responsibility, we can reduce the risks and build a more resilient Westminster.
Councillor Hassan.
Supplementary, Lord Mayor. When will residents start seeing changes? Thank you.
Well, to some extent, you already can. If you go to Maida Hill Place or Shepherd Market in Mayfair, you'll see what look like ordinary flower beds, but are actually rain gardens. Cleverly designed features with underground tanks that hold back stormwater. Beneath the flower beds, there's a tank. You can't see the tank, Tony, but it's there. It holds the water. And this reduces the pressure on drains during heavy rainfall and helps prevent surface water flooding. If you're quick, Tony, you can go to Westbourne Green by St Mary Magdalene's Church. They're building them at the moment. You can see the SUDs under construction. I've recently approved a further £1.6 million for the next phase of sustainable drainage systems. This is going to be built into new public realm schemes that will happen anyway, but also form part of the highways regular maintenance programme across the city. And half of the funding, which Councillor Hassan would be pleased about, is going to go to standalone rain gardens in areas that are particularly vulnerable, so across Maida Vale, Harrow Road and parts of Queen's Park, where water we retain before it arrives in Little Venice to upset your residents. But that isn't just about infrastructure. I've asked the National Flood Forum to help set up a flood action group in Little Venice and Maida Vale, so residents can play a direct role in shaping our response. The first meeting is next week on July the 2nd. So, yes, you will see a difference, some of it physical, and some will be how we as a community prepare and respond to flooding.
Thank you. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. The question is for the Cabinet Member for Housing, and I also understand is position this evening, she has my every sympathy. Can the Cabinet Member please inform the Council how many times the Housing Outreach Team has visited the temporary Westminster residents in the illegal tents on Park Lane, and whether they joined the Met officers recently sent by Labour's Mayor to inquire about their welfare?
Our outreach services are always at the Park Lane encampment, working with, they work very closely with the people in the encampment. Unfortunately, a lot of them have complex needs, and some are not willing to take the outreach services that are available. But from the last update I had, we had at least 13 people that had taken up the outreach services.
Supplementary?
Supplementary, Lord Mayor, thank you. Thank you for that helpful answer to suggest that they're there on a regular basis. Does the Cabinet Member believe that the residents of those same tents should be prioritised for housing over others in the city who may have need, as laid out under our own new policies?
I can't give you a blanket answer on that. Everyone has particular needs, so we'd have to look at the individual needs and then support them on a pathway.
I'll accept maybe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Lilly.
Did not expect that.
Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've just a question for the Cabinet Member for Climate, Ecology, Culture and Air Quality about what is probably the biggest free theatre event in the world. How did the weekend go?
Thank you. Good luck with that one. It was nice and sunny.
Thank you. Let's hear the answer.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lilly, but I'm assuming you're referring to West End Live, which I confirm is the largest free open-air theatre event in the world. It went incredibly well, and it was indeed, and I'm delighted that we're continuing it for the 20th anniversary that we just had this weekend. And thank you for councillors from both sides of the House who came down to see the event. Obviously, the weather was particularly difficult over the weekend, so I'd just like to say thanks to the St John's ambulance team for being on site the entire day and for helping out anyone that needed support while the weather was still quite hot. We had almost 70,000 attendees, over 50 shows, and all the work that went into it culminated in a fantastic experience for everyone that came down. I was particularly proud this year that we did a lot more work to improve the accessibility to the event with supported ticketing for the accessibility area, ensuring that we prioritised local Westminster schools and volunteers for the VIP area.
Supplementary?
Thank you. Supplementary. Thanks for such a wicked answer. Supplementary. What else are we working on to make going to the theatre more accessible, please?
Thank you. You know, it's a big focus of mine to improve accessibility to the arts, and West End Live is just one weekend, and I do feel in the past it's often been the centrepiece, whereas this year I want it to be the kicking off point for all the wider work that the team's been working on in partnership with the Society of London Theatre and many of the theatre groups that we have across the city. So there's a few things that are coming up shortly. You're all already aware of ArtsLink, the local culture education partnership. We're running an event shortly for 60 teachers to attend a lecture and a performance of Lion King. So thank you to the Lyceum Theatre for hosting that. But in terms of getting it into our schools, Donmar is going to be going in and doing Frankenstein performances in schools all across the city. I see the Lord Mayor nodding. I know he went to the first performance recently. If there's one happening in your ward, please do get down and see the great work that they're doing. Inside Out Festival is going to be back over the whole of August, so look out for the comms around that. Look out for the comms around that and the performances that are going to be happening there. And then we're going to be doing an exciting partnership specifically with SALT on the Theatre of a Child programme, where we're working with specific shows to get kids into the theatres, to also have backstage access to get lectures there about some of the jobs that they could potentially do in the future. So there's lots going on and lots more coming soon. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Pickford.
Here, here. Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is for the Leader of the Council. On the 2nd of June, I wrote to you explaining that the tap water in Morgan House had tested positive for hydrocarbons considered harmful to human health. I asked you to carry out more detailed testing on the samples the residents have taken so that we could find out how the contamination occurred. I didn't receive a reply. Will you commit to testing the samples the residents took so we can find out what happened?
Leader.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Obviously, I have been talking actively to officers about this case, and you have received fulsome responses from them in detail about this case. I am aware that a lot of work has been done by the council to try and respond to those concerns, working with Thames Water. I think that there is a technical question, as you've been told multiple times, around the historic water that was taken at that time, and I believe you've been gone back to asking for more details about that, because obviously, yeah, you've been asked to provide the details of when it was collected, the source, storage method, all those sorts of things. There have been multiple tests taken by the council, independent experts, and by Thames Water. I think we're very clear it's been a distressing time for the residents of Morgan House. We recognise that our teams have been working round the clock to try and respond and reassure residents that their water is safe, and we are conscious that multiple tests have taken place. There is a specific thing, as you have been told multiple times by officers and by the advised by the independent experts that the council has brought in, about the challenges around storage of the particular samples that were taken at the time.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Thames Water did agree a test would be helpful. I also ask that you carry out an investigation into the council response to the event and why residents and councillor concerns were dismissed. Will you commit to appointing someone from outside of the relevant departments to investigate?
I am very confident in the senior leadership team of the Housing Department who have taken swift action to support those people on the ground. We know it's a distressing time for residents when something like this happens, but we have some extremely experienced officers who are working round the clock to try and reassure them. I'm not convinced there are people in other council departments that would be particularly relevant for this case, and I have confidence in the team that are working there with getting in independent expertise, as has been shown to you on numerous occasions about this. I'm conscious that it is a challenging situation for the residents, and that our teams have been very proactive in working with you and residents to try and provide reassurance. I appreciate you are obviously championing their views. I think we need to focus on the details that have been shared with you by the independent experts to try and get through this.
Thank you. Councillor Carman.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question's for the Cabinet Member for Planning and Economic Development. Can you give an update on the Meanwhile programme, please?
Thank you, Councillor. So the Meanwhile programme is helping to revitalise the West End by matching innovative new brands with vacant retail space. But it's not just about filling empty shops, it's about creating fresh, exciting experiences that bring people back to our high streets. We received over 800 applications from small businesses keen to get involved, and I'm pleased to announce we just launched our largest Meanwhile project ever. It's called Style of Our Own, a celebration of female-founded sportswear brands. 18 of them are now trading from the former Ted Baker store on Regent Street, where they're going to be until October. And that space is not just for shopping. There's a mini football pitch on the first floor, and there's going to be over 200 events throughout the summer. So a big thanks to the Crown Estates for providing the space, and MasterCard for sponsoring the Meanwhile activation. So supporting small businesses, supporting the West End, and supporting women's sport, that's what Fairer Westminster looks like.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Supplementary. Is the programme going to be extended outside the West End?
I have good news. So we're now looking to take the Meanwhile programme beyond the West End, bringing life back to vacant buildings in other parts of the city. One example is the old Jobs Centre on Lisson Grove. Instead of standing empty for 2 years awaiting redevelopment, work's underway to create The Exchange, a temporary collaborative space for events, co-working and creativity. It's being run by a social enterprise focused on supporting young people and the creative industries. There's already a cafe open on the ground floor, serving authentic coffee from Africa and the Middle East, and more is on the way. So why is that funny? Why is that funny, Tony? Why is coffee from Africa funny?
Thank you. Let's get through this so we can get the next question.
It's early days, but it shows how meanwhile uses can unlock potential in unexpected places and deliver community value.
Thank you. Councillor Alzamanoff.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is a question for the Cabinet Member for Adult Health. For over 90 years, the Marylebone Project has been providing life-changing services for homeless women. Hundreds of women who sleep rough, experience domestic abuse and are trafficked and have complex trauma use the sanctuary drop-in. This closes on the 2nd of July. Can the Cabinet Member tell me what provision the Council is making when the much-needed services end? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, and I think we're all very concerned about the Marylebone Project. This doesn't actually fall under my portfolio. It does fall under housing. Lisa, would you be okay to answer the question? Thank you.
Thank you. We are all saddened to learn that Church Army have made the decision to close the sanctuary scheme, and we note this was a difficult decision for the management team at the charity, given its importance to the local community. The scheme was not commissioned by the council, but I know the service supported many women from across London to enable them to make positive decisions and outcomes in their lives. We have been supporting Church Army to support women who are affected by the closure, and so they can be referred to alternative service provision. We remain committed to supporting women who are experiencing homelessness and domestic abuse and continue to work with our partners to do so.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In a building owned by the Church Army, the Marylebone Project hosts 112 long and short-term beds. In an announcement published by the Church Army on the 6th of June, it mentions potential sale of buildings and continuation of work with a third party. Can the Cabinet Member confirm if the third party is the council, and if the building is for sale, will everything be done to ensure a smooth transition?
I can confirm that the 112 beds remain, but I cannot confirm the third party.
Thank you.
So, sorry, can I just clarify? These 112 beds will remain for certain.
Can I ask you to deal with that after the meeting?
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Piddock, we've got a minute. So a quick question, please. A quick question, a quick answer.
Right, quickly, can I ask the Councillor Member, Cabinet Member for Streets? Many of my residents rely on the bus to get around. What are you doing to support the bus network?
30 seconds.
So, we're reviewing pinch points. This microphone isn't working yet, is it? Is it working? Is it working? Yeah, it's working. So we're reviewing pinch points for buses across the city. We've already got 10 sites, including Maidavale, Abbey Road, Chippenham Road. The measures we're doing there include curbside restrictions, realignment, signal timing reviews to ensure buses can move through junctions and stops without obstruction. And by the end of the summer, we'll have completed a citywide pinch point review with up to 30 more sites expected to be identified for improvement. We're also progressing plans for 5.5 kilometres of new and extended bus lanes. We've just finished consultation on Bayswater Road, and we're about to launch more consultations on Bishopsbridge Road, Kensington Road and Harrow Road. In parallel, we're proposing 24/7 bus lane operations to make the bus network more resilient. It often experiences obstructions from overnight parking in the evening and weekends. I'd love to tell you more, but we're out of time.
Thank you very much. That is the end of the time allowed for questions. Thank you. Agenda item 9, councillor issue. I call Councillor Paul Fisher to speak on his chosen topic of council priorities in the West End, Oxford Street, tents and crime.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Last week, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, declared that he had achieved North Korean levels of public support for his plans on Oxford Street. He then went on, thinking that he hadn't exhausted what was a particularly tasteless comparison, to say to the media that were gathered there that perhaps they should start calling him Kim. Actually, 6,000 respondents out of a city of 10 million is pretty bad in local democracy, let alone in dictatorship. So Sadiq Khan is performing badly across the board. And actually, I think there's a silent majority in this room that agrees that he is an embarrassment to our city of Westminster and to our capital. But he's one of 3 Labour donkeys, I'm afraid, that are currently pulling the cart that is the city of Westminster in completely different directions. Let's start with Oxford Street, which we've discussed a lot tonight. Last week, or in fact earlier this year, Sadiq Khan said that the council was failing on Oxford Street, the council in Westminster. He had to be reminded that it was only his own party that was in charge in Westminster, after which he decided actually, and I quote, that they were coming round to his way of thinking. That's his view of the council, that the council are in agreement with the Mayor of London on Oxford Street. Well, actually, that's news to myself and Councillor Barnes, because we know that Councillor Lilly's position in the West End now, entirely reasonably, is that he, and I quote, firmly opposes the creation of a mayoral development area on Oxford Street. We all do. But Councillor Lilly, you then need to ask your leader, because last week, the leader's declaration was that actually we should all start, and I quote, moving forward with the mayor's plans for Oxford Street. This is now, I'm afraid, and I say this sincerely to my former colleagues, this is now a completely irreconcilable position from different members of the Labour group because they want to keep alive the dream of standing up, and I quote, standing up for the residents of the West End. But they're not, because the question for my former colleagues is, what are you going to do about it? You aren't going, you're not going to launch, there's no posturing involved here at all, Councillor. No, there's no posturing at all. When the Mayor of London makes his formal decision, which may be subject to judicial review, the question for the Labour group is, are they prepared to take proper legal advice on the question of a JR? There is no reservation for the costs of any such JR as part of the March budget. Now, moving on, what about licensing? Maybe there's some more consistency there. Because earlier this year, Sadiq Khan met in Ronnie Scott's alongside the Chancellor of the Exchequer and Danger Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, who, by the way, it seems is lobbying internally for taxing every asset under the sun, including our savings accounts. Corbynism is live and well in this cabinet. We can see that they met in Ronnie Scott's. I know Councillor Begum dislikes that thoroughly. We can see that in Ronnie Scott's, they were discussing the prospect of arrogating to the Mayor of London the power to override his own Labour Council on licensing decisions. What's the Labour group's position on that? How are they going to seek to challenge that? The reality is that Labour doesn't want to speak out about Khan's behaviour in London. And actually, I think the reality is, and I think you all know this, that at a regional level and a national level, Labour simply doesn't care a jot about the City of Westminster because they know it's not a flagship council for the party. Let's then look at crime and how that affects the West End. We know that Sadiq, I think perfectly fairly, criticised the Chancellor of the Exchequer for her spending review only a few weeks ago, and he said that she had neglected elements of law and order on the streets of London. That doesn't exonerate him, of course, because he's presided over a 20% increase in thefts of the person over the past year, and actually shoplifting in our city is now 5 times the national average. Sadiq's record on crime is abysmal. Everybody knows that. Now, let me also say this. I was a member of the party for 20 years. I didn't make this decision lightly. And actually, one of the things that really triggered me was 18 months ago when I made certain comments about an organisation called Hizb ut-Tahrir on the streets of London, who were calling for jihad. And I criticised them. And I got a call locally. This isn't a national issue. I got a call from the Labour Party locally. You guys can discuss this internally. Essentially suggesting that I didn't fully appreciate the charitable nature of the activities of Hizb ut-Tahrir. How outrageous a phone conversation was that to have? And I think it's really important that the Labour Party look at itself and ask itself whether it's really standing up for people in the West End and for people in London more generally. Over the past year, we've seen unemployment rise by 10%, inflation up, budget deficit up year on year until the next general election. This is presiding over a barely managed decline of our country, our capital and our city, and I'm proud to have joined the Conservatives in opposition to it.
Thank you. I call Councillor Rachel Less to reply.
Congratulations to Councillor Fisher on your new maiden speech for your newfound party. Lord Mayor, the issue of encampments across the city is a serious and highly visible issue. and it's one that council teams are working around the clock to help resolve. Officers and our outreach partners are consistently making sure that people are supported sensitively to move on and seek support with dignity and care. In the West End specifically, Mount Street Gardens and Marylebone Library sites owned by the council are now clear, with ward councillors having been kept updated throughout. Park Lane remains a particular and complex problem, but we are keeping pressure on Transport for London to address it. We know that the dispersal of this encampment is taking place, and our officers are already working closely with TfL to make sure this happens swiftly and sensitively. Longer term, we want to see TfL use all measures at their disposal to keep this area permanently clear and develop methods to design out rough sleeping, like safety hoardings as we've used under the Westway. I'm pleased that we're also taking stronger action through public space protection orders, with a consultation now live on 2 new PSPOs and extension of an existing one. The proposed PSPOs would give us additional powers to tackle antisocial behaviour in the south of the borough, as well as pedicabs. We're also looking to expand an existing nuisance vehicle PSPO through widening the current boundary to include Soho and Mayfair. And we've launched a call for evidence to consider extending a PSPO on antisocial behaviour throughout the borough. If the new orders are implemented, fines of up to £1,000 could be handed out to people who flout our regulations. This is all part of our wider programme of initiatives to clamp down on ASB in the city. Thanks to our significant investment in enforcement and make Westminster a safer, cleaner and more welcoming place. Lord Mayor, the Mayor's announcement last week that the pedestrianisation of Oxford Street is going ahead was not the Council's preferred option, but it was hardly unexpected. This administration had developed shovel-ready plans for Oxford Street in close collaboration with residents and businesses. We've worked pragmatically with the GLA to achieve the best deal for Westminster residents, including the successful removal of side streets from the MDA to keep the focus on Oxford Street, the delivery of the transformation east of Oxford Street, very similar in nature to our original plans, which retains bus access, and enhancements of the security along the whole street and reduction of freight traffic in the wider area. Most importantly, as plans progress, this council will remain a strong voice for local residents. Lord Mayor, this administration is genuinely committed to ensuring public safety. We'll keep investing and using all powers available to help us tackle crime and antisocial behaviour in the West End and throughout the city. Working alongside our partners, the safety and well-being of our residents and visitors remains our utmost priority in delivering a fairer Westminster, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Less. That concludes this item. We now move on to the remaining agenda items: party business, reports for full council and notice of motion. The topics selected for debate and the names of those down to speak were tabled on the order paper sent to all earlier this week. Each speaker has up to 5 minutes. So, agenda item 10 is party business. The opposition group have selected the topic Housing for Westminster for debate as their business this evening. This is set out in the order paper. So, I now call Councillor David Harvey to open the debate.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. First of all, Councillor Begum, I wish you better. It's not nice to have a bad back. Now, as you know, Lord Mayor, I'm rather fond of reading about late antiquity. So I dug back to the manifesto that this party put forward in 2022 and looked at the housing section. I've got to say, it's on the cusp of failure. It's regrettable, because across this chamber, whether we follow Macmillan or Bevan, we all believe very strongly in the moral imperative of social housing and good social housing. But tonight, my colleagues will point out the failure of your promised transformation. Councillor Hayes looking at ASB and how it's destroying residents' lives. Councillor Rigby, the damage caused to mixed communities by your turn away from affordable housing. And Councillor Shearer will speak on the failure of your vision in commissioning new homes. But let me go to the reality earlier this week on the Grosvenor Regency estate. Rotten timbers, damaged windows, the emergence of drug and likely gang activity in council garages. Earlier in the week, I had to bring water repairs back to officers in a particular flat for the 4th time. I also met an elderly resident who for 2 years has asked her electrical fuse box and other bits of electric kit to be moved from a place totally impossible from an elderly, vulnerable resident. Not done, no repair happening. A little while before that, I met a frail resident who reminded me about the fire door that they'd had put in. A new fire safety door. They had been extremely concerned about their capacity to move that door. And lo and behold, though she'd spoken to officers, she fell and broke her hip. Now, while we all applaud the work being done on fire safety, no officer paid any attention to her, no adaptation, no triage, no action and much pain. Now, a fortnight ago, I was pleased to meet call centre staff, and I was impressed by their care. But the systems are not always delivering the necessary bricks, mortar, plumbing and piping for residents. Ward member evidence from across the city isn't good. Churchill Gardens to Hallfield, Holcroft Court to Vale Royal, and more. 3 years into this administration, we have bad results, starting with a lost opportunity to realign and novate contracts in 2022. Now, the difference, Lord Mayor, between your side and our side of this chamber is that we understand what's actually achievable. We're honest with residents about timescales and constraints. In 2021, before we left office, 76% of our residents were satisfied with repair services. Not good enough. We wanted better. Today, your own figure's down at 65%. You complained about our complaints handling when we were in charge. It was only 36% satisfaction. Not good enough. We should have done better. But today, your own data says that satisfaction is 27%. Housing is difficult. We all know that. But we're looking after people. It benchmarks against the rest of London, Adam, I'm afraid, whether you like it or not. But the party opposite has made promises and you haven't kept them. And your consultation processes. The new consultation with residents' associations about the new maintenance and repair contracts is a shocker. Sending out invitations on the 20th of June for meetings with RAs on the 30th of June online is a failure. How can RAs talk to their members and their committees if you give them barely more than a week? Who's driving these decisions? Someone going on holiday? At the core of this meeting is just a 20-minute presentation, and the residents deserve better. And you should have started with an open hybrid meeting which every resident could come to and they could be together, talking with you, not being talked at. That meeting on the 30th should be postponed. The most serious case, and already Councillor Pitford's referred to it, are the issues on the Lidington Longmoor estate. The failing 1960s district heating and water system continues to bring high pressure, damage leading to flooding, backwater sewage and damage to homes, and heartbreak to us. You've been in power for 3 years. Take responsibility. Our practical plan was to take the pressure off the system. You dropped it. And you put in place a bigger network for a faraway future, perhaps in another galaxy. When will it ever happen? People can't wait for years for a scheme that will cost perhaps 60k a household. It's unthinkable. Leaseholders are the obvious victims. I remind the party opposite that in your manifesto you promised to limit service charge rises. This was delusional. I meet residents whose service charges have doubled. Now, I'm very glad you kept up the repayment scheme giving leaseholders the best major works support in London. But many leaseholders believe the council is out to soak them into massive debt. And staff, are you keeping your best frontline officers? Many look very worn down. Now, Lord Mayor, there are good intentions right across this chamber from everywhere. But good intentions in housing delivery are not enough. It's about an ambitious and specific agenda. It's about the people we on this side, and I think many of you meet every day of the week and they're not happy. It's about people, planning permissions, contractor capacity. The truth is that governing is much harder than campaigning. It's not about politics, Lord Mayor. It's all about people in housing. Thank you.
Councillor Hayes.
Lord Mayor, I must start by mentioning my predecessor, Councillor Gillian Arundel. I know Gillian was a much loved and admired friend and colleague. I also know she was a diligent councillor, known by many people across Vincent Square and Pimlico, and that she is sadly missed. Next, I'd like to thank the people of Vincent Square for the trust they've placed in me. It was a hard-fought by-election with a high turnout. I must commend my determined opponents for putting up a real fight. Huge thanks to my fellow Vincent Square councillors, David Harvey and Selina Short, for all the help and support they gave me in the by-election and since. Every new councillor should be so lucky to have two such amazing ward colleagues. I must also give my sincere thanks to my fellow Conservative councillors and activists who dug so deep during the campaign. I was born in Vincent Square ward at the old Westminster Hospital and have lived locally my entire life. It is a special place full of remarkable people. Standing in the middle of the ward on Vincent Square itself, you look one way and you see the Mother of all Parliament standing proud. You look the other and you see Hyde Tower. It is literally Westminster in bite-sized form, and I am honoured now to serve it. It is apt for me to speak about housing as my first contribution here, as I am a product of Westminster Council's estates. When I was born, my parents were living on the Ebury Bridge estate. I was 18 months old when we moved to Longmoor Gardens, around 7 when we moved to Abbots Manor, and around 11 when we moved to Lillington Gardens, which was home until I moved out as a young adult. I think most people here know that I'm in the pub business. Less known is the fact that many years ago, I owned the last pub on Churchill Gardens. Running a pub on an estate like Churchill Gardens gives a close-up view of the place and the people. But if that was not enough, my late father was the youngest of 14, of which at least 11 lived on Churchill Gardens as adults. And you did hear that right, 14 children. How times have changed. They couldn't afford to even rent a television growing up, but I think in this day and age they'd probably be starring in their own Netflix TV show. My mother moved to Abbots Manor Estate as a child, and her sister, my aunt obviously, later married into a family on the Peabody Avenue estate. So it's pretty accurate to say I had relatives on virtually every estate on South Westminster. But I always felt lucky growing up in Westminster, the epicentre of London, the greatest metropolis in the world. But things clearly now are on the wrong track. Virtually every conversation during the by-election, whether it was a resident in a studio in the Checkerboard estate or a large townhouse around the square, centred on the same issue, people no longer feeling safe. I have not yet got to know most colleagues opposite, and I hope to rectify that soon. But housing and crime and safety should be non-political issues, and I'm sure we all want our streets and our estates to be and to feel safe. However, the Labour Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has created a situation where crime and disorder on our streets is no longer punished and indeed is permitted. And that reality is taking root in other areas, like here on our estates. We all hear stories on a near daily basis of residents left to face vile abuse and criminality by other residents or others, and very little or nothing is always done about it. The attitude taken is one more often concerned about the rights of the perpetrator than the rights of the victim. If you are lucky enough to have a council flat in Westminster, you have a responsibility to behave respectfully to your neighbours. If someone torments, hurts or abuses anyone, they should be dealt with quickly and severely. When there are no repercussions for misdeeds, there is an explosion in wrongdoing. It is fairly obvious. Someone needs to educate Mayor Khan on that. And since he is likely to take a call from a colleague opposite before myself, perhaps someone can pass on that message. In the meantime, Lord Mayor, I call for us to restore respect, decency and a sense of safety to our estates. Let's put an end to people living in fear. Let us ensure anyone abusing the privilege of a Westminster Council home is evicted swiftly if they cause misery or harm to neighbours. Let us put the decent 99% above the bad acting 1% every time.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes, and congratulations on your maiden speech. Councillor Tuzali.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Growing up in Westminster, I'm unfortunately far too familiar with the inadequacies and issues that plagued our Westminster homes. Whether it was damp, mould, a leak, or even a broken ceiling, regrettably, I've seen it all, not only in my own home, but in that of my residents. I have a whole range of memories growing up when it comes to both the challenges inside the home and outside. Due to my grandmother's ill health, my mother and I, along with my auntie, would often call the council to raise an issue in her home on the Lisson Green estate. And more often than not, we'd have to call multiple times for the same issues, the biggest of which was mould. My grandmother had lived in her council flat for over 40 years, and time again, there would be a sickening amount of mould that would plague multiple rooms, ranging from the living room, the bedroom, and even the kitchen. We would call up, promised a repair. We would call up again, promised a repair. We would call again, promised a repair. If we were lucky, a surveyor would come out to visit the property and they would agree that a lot of work would be needed, especially in our living room. It felt quite dystopian, in all honesty, as the surveyor we relied on would then disappear, never to be heard of again. As my grandmother used to put it, we had to fight with the council just to make sure our homes were in a condition that dignified our living standards. Every repair, every call out, it felt like the council were doing us a favour, almost as if we should just be content that we're living in a council flat and shouldn't complain too much. This was often evidenced by various contractors who would often comment on how lucky we were to live in a council flat in central London. I disagree with that idea wholeheartedly. We aren't lucky to live in a council flat in central London. They're there for the less fortunate, and without council flats, a lot of those like myself and the Cabinet Member for Housing, as well as the Cabinet Member for Children and Public Protection, and many others, wouldn't be here today. Residents living in Westminster homes have always deserved the dignity and respect that those in private homes benefit from when dealing with disrepair and like issues. These issues and feelings could have been copied and pasted anywhere in Westminster. And for those of you in this chamber who've grown up in social housing in Westminster, you'll understand exactly where I'm coming from. One point I'd like to mention, and perhaps I'll return to it later on, is the difficulties our residents, myself included, found when it came to speak to someone in person. Our housing offices were closing down. The number of housing officers on hand to help were dwindling, and the physical buildings, to say the very least, were crumbling. So as residents, we were stuck on endless loops, making calls. We couldn't properly report things in person, and in most cases, there was no actual place to go to report these issues. Our Westminster homes and housing services did not live up to the prestige that the name of this great city held. This is unfortunately the legacy of the Conservative Council. I'm now glad to say that under this current council's leadership, and under the guidance from my friend and colleague, Councillor Begum, the Cabinet Member for Housing Services, those living in Westminster council flats have seen drastic improvements to their homes, their communities, and their standards of living. Since coming into power in 2022, the reforms, smaller, seen in the council's housing department have been nothing short of a miracle. We can finally say that as a council, we're moving in the right direction and are making the changes that are needed. We've reopened estate offices, as well as opened new ones in places that have been neglected for years upon years, in areas like Queen's Park, the West End, Pimlico, and Bayswater. To put things into perspective, Lord Mayor, when the opposition were in power, they took the very sad decision to close 7 of our local housing offices throughout Westminster, and for everyone closed was the same old excuse: to save money. Save a little bit here, save a little bit there, take away residents' voices here, and all to spend it on a mound in Marble Arch. As well as the opening of several estate offices, the Cabinet Member, and I'm sure she'll mention this later on, drove our housing services to achieve an amazing C1 rating, following an inspection by the regulator of social housing. And to put this into perspective, it's essentially an A-star. Well, it is. Yes, it is. Another achievement by Councillor Begum and the housing team is the changes made to the housing allocation system. An expired system that had been in place for many years and was in desperate need of change is not only often forgot people on the housing register, but it abandoned them. For many, being on the housing register and bidding for a flat meant endless years without a chance of having a place to call a permanent home. And although not perfect for some, the new allocation scheme embodies what a fairer Westminster truly is. I want to put my thanks on record to Councillor Begum and the whole of the housing team for all the hard work they've put in over the last 3 years. And speaking as a resident of this amazing city, I just want to say a personal thank you for making the lives of those like us who still live in council flats a whole lot better. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Councillor Suzanne. Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, everyone. I'm delighted to be speaking in tonight's debate regarding the challenges of housing in Westminster for our residents. But firstly, can I congratulate Councillor Hayes on your maiden speech? The desire for more housing, most notably affordable, is something on both sides of the chamber we can agree on. But the question becomes, what should this affordable housing look like? To put this into perspective and to highlight the need specifically for intermediate housing in London, the 2017 Strategic Housing Market Assessment Report, which is seen as a sound basis for successive repetitions of the London Plan, estimated up to 12,000 intermediate homes are needed each year across London. However, Savills talks about an even higher figure of up to 18,000 to be delivered annually to satisfy the demand for this group. Lord Mayor, intermediate housing plays a crucial role in the delivery of affordable housing, especially when it comes to helping key workers. Key workers have traditionally been defined as public sector jobs, such as nurses, police, and teachers. But the COVID pandemic exposed a reliance on a wider range of frontline workers. Key workers therefore form an important part of our workforce and help to create a vibrant mixed community here in Westminster. So therefore we need to be doing much more to be offering them secure, affordable accommodation near to where they work. If we examine Labour's Future of Westminster Housing Review, there's a key chapter on housing supply and the role of planning that it plays to help meet the challenge of increasing this supply. Planning policy sets the scope and provides the parameters within which our housing supply can flow. The review talks about not imposing additional financial burden upon new developments. However, I would argue it will create additional financial burdens, thereby restricting the building of more residential units, and that includes both social and intermediate. Lord Mayor, whilst the aim of increasing the overall supply of affordable housing to help meet the housing needs within the city is to be commended, the increased requirement for housing contributions, whether that be provided on-site affordable units, making financial contributions, or a combination of both, will, I emphasise, will make the viability of sites being brought forward for housing schemes more difficult to achieve, especially those smaller sites delivering nearer to the threshold of 10 units. As Councillor Harvey referred to in his excellent speech, good intentions in housing delivery aren't enough. In office and in power, you must consider planning constraints and market realities when setting policies. It's about understanding what's achievable. How very true. Labour's revised affordable housing policy as part of the City Plan Partial Review proposes to shift the split of affordable housing units in new developments, thereby restricting the supply of genuine affordable homes. Why? Because the review and the policy prioritises social housing. The review talks about aiming to increase the proportion of social housing and decreasing intermediate housing. The new policy requires 70% of affordable housing to be social housing, council flats at social rent, and 30% to be designated for intermediate housing, compared to the previous split of 60% in intermediate and 40% social, which was in the City Plan drafted and adopted by the Conservatives, and frankly, let's be honest, immensely fairer. Labour talks about ensuring future developments, contributing to the objectives of a fairer Westminster. However, how can it be fair to reduce the priority of intermediate housing developments, so by effectively restricting the ability of our key workers the opportunity to own and rent their own properties here in Westminster? Lord Mayor, We need, therefore, to be supporting our key workers, those in the squeezed middle, who struggle to afford both social and market rate options, but who go out and do a hard day's work, contributing to the local economy and community by offering a realistic and sustainable intermediate housing option.
Thank you, Councillor Rigby. Councillor Shearer.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In preparing for this speech, I had the unenviable task of reading through Labour's manifesto from 2022. There, nestled in the numerous promises, many well-meaning but slightly naive, is the bold statement: a Labour council will care for our local communities by building more council and key worker homes to give families a future in Westminster. Whilst my colleague Councillor Rigby has eloquently debated the ominous key worker pledge, I will review the Labour group's promise to build more homes. Of all the promises where Labour has lightly fallen short in these 3 years, their failure to add a material number of affordable homes to Westminster's pipeline is debatably their biggest failure. We have asked officers a simple question, both directly and also via the PNS function. How many new affordable homes have been added to the pipeline since May 2022? The answer? Well, we didn't get a straight answer. Is it single figures? Is it zero? Who knows? But what is truly remarkable is this Labour's group's willingness to take credit for the Conservative Regen programme and affordable pipeline.
Thank you, Rachel.
In the absence of any clear answers, I've looked through the Council's press releases and the PNS documents. They have proudly claimed successes in, wait for it, Ebury Bridge,
Thank you, Rachel.
Luxborough Street, Balmoral Castle and Darwin House,
Thank you, Rachel.
Church Street. On top of this, I reviewed the Housing Renewal website, which included Queen's Park Court, Adpurst Street, Torrington House Car Park, 300 Harrow Road, Westmead, Carlton Dean. Let me ask you, what is the common denominator for all of these schemes? Let me give you a clue. There is an important date involved. Quite right. None. None of the 10 schemes being put forward, publicly listed, were brought forward by Labour. In fact, we still haven't had any confirmation Labour has brought forward any additional and significant numbers of affordable units into the pipeline. So let me ask the Leader of the Council a very simple question. Will he send me the number of additional homes brought into the affordable home pipeline under his group's tenure?
300 more council homes. There you go. Simple, Mark.
In the absence of numbers, let's look at... I'll ask the Leader to confirm that. In the absence of numbers, let's look at the future. And again, latest public statements in this space. I was surprised... Sorry, Lord Mayor.
That's why he's retiring.
I can't speak over this.
Councillor Shearer.
Thank you,
Continue.
Lord Mayor. Right. In the absence of numbers, let's look to the future. And again, the latest public statements in this space. I was surprised, but pleased to see a recent announcement that Labour is looking at 6 further affordable schemes, including the Queen Mother Sports Centre, Brunel, Main House, Bravington, Dalkeith and Sussex Street. Anyone here feels this reeks of desperation, especially in an election year? Good luck. What appears to be absolutely no new activity over 3 years, and now, 10 months before an election, there's a decision to try to unlock these sites. Why leave this so late? Aside from taking the credit from Westminster's Conservatives' regen schemes, what have you been doing for 3 years? We've had pet projects launched left, right and centre, but you haven't brought forward any new meaningful residential numbers of any note that we know about. Aside from a headline number, there is also a decision I want to highlight. The Labour group talks of a fairer Westminster, but actions speak louder than words. And let me ask you this. What's happened to the SHOP programme, the Specialist Housing for Older People programme? This programme was proving very successful and was heavily involved in the design and delivery of Darwin House, amongst other schemes. Councillor Noble, who's been banging out press releases and quotes on all of the Conservative-led schemes, said, "The completion of the new homes marks a significant milestone for our residents from the old Darwin House who have been eagerly anticipating the move in their new fit-for-purpose homes. With the support from our specialist officers, they have all selected flats with super aids and adaptations to meet their needs.
Is that in the Morning Star?
I understand.
Yeah, that sounds really communist, doesn't it, Tony?
I understand there is an ASC specialist accommodation programme, but I believe that's more involved in fit-out and services. Surely we need to be thinking about those vulnerable groups at the very beginning of this process. Or maybe shop isn't needed.
Councillor Shearer, please continue.
Thank you. Well, I will
Please
try. I
continue,
need to.
Councillor Shearer.
Maybe shop isn't needed anymore in the same guise because there's no substantially new homes coming into the pipeline. So let me conclude. This Labour group has apparently failed to provide us with any clear numbers on additional new affordable homes. And common sense would suggest this is because the numbers are abysmal. Well, is that all?
342.
Thank you,
Councillor
342 is not a
Shearer.
lot. Almost
Councillor
all.
Shearer, thank you very much. You're over 30 seconds over.
Excuse me,
Councillor
Lord Mayor,
Begum, will you please respond?
Thank
I've
you,
made
Lord-
my ruling, Councillor Shearer. Please sit down. Councillor Begum.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have one top priority as Cabinet Member for Housing Services, and that's to make life easier for residents. That ambition is at the heart of achieving a fairer Westminster. So I'm familiar with many of the challenges that the opposition have highlighted. That's because they're the challenges I've been doing everything I can to tackle since 2022. And in Councillor Harvey's speech, there were some inaccuracies. When it comes to complaints, we have changed the complaint service, and for the last 6 months, we have consistently answered 80% of complaints on time. In February, 90% of stage 1 complaints were responded on time as well. And that's a vast improvement from when you were Cabinet Member for Housing Services. We inherited a housing service that faced severe challenges, decades of a broken outsourcing model that had left our housing stock in disrepair, a service that had been taken out of our communities with the closure of estate offices, where the needs and feedback of residents were an afterthought. Fast forward to now, where our housing services have just been rated C1 by the Social Housing Regulator. We're the first council in London to reach this milestone. I saw the Leader of the Opposition recently describe this rating as only a basic pass. That is factually incorrect. C1 is the highest rating that the regulator can award. I'm the first to recognise that there is more to be done, but when you compare where we are now to where we were just a few years ago, the improvements are clear. 96% of emergency repairs are now completed on time. That figure for non-emergency repairs is up to 83%, and over 90% of stage 2 complaints are answered on time. And as our C1 rating shows, quality and communication around works is much better. This shift has been possible because when it comes to the challenges that colleagues have outlined in this debate, we've actually been doing something about them. Our repairs charter was a step change in how we deal with reactive works, and our complaints and housing improvement programs have led to major positive changes. To give just one example, we now have a customer advocacy team to support the most vulnerable residents with complex cases. No, it wasn't. Which is achieving 97% resident satisfaction. We're bringing the housing service closer to residents physically with the 4 new service centres we've opened in Queen's Park, Pimlico, Bayswater and Soho. And we're bringing residents closer to the service by offering more opportunities to make voices heard through residents' panels, the forum and our task and finish groups. We've got a new fairer housing allocations policy. We're giving residents long-term security and creating stable communities by ending the use of flexible social tenancies. And we're working with the private rented sector and through our new housing compact with registered providers to ensure housing improvements across all of Westminster. To support residents with the cost of living crisis, we have our £1 million rent support fund to help those who are struggling with payments. We've made our leaseholder payment plans for major works some of the most generous in the country, including 8-year interest-free payment plan options. And we're supporting those facing homelessness with £7 million of council funding every year and an ambitious temporary accommodation acquisition strategy. We know there are huge challenges on some estates, including those connected to the PDHU, who have sadly been facing repeated and serious problems for many years. But unlike the last administration, we are actually doing something about it, not just leaving it to fall further into disrepair as it was allowed to do so for so many decades. We're doing a full independent review of the current system to ensure it operates safely and working closely with residents to find the best and cheapest option for the future. And yes, we are building more homes that our residents can afford. By working with the Mayor of London and accepting funding that the last administration turned down, we are increasing the number of affordable homes in Westminster. As a result of this administration, there will be an additional 342 socially rented homes in our housing programme, much of which we've already completed, from the major regeneration at Ebury Phase 1 to small, fully affordable projects like Luxborough Street. And we're in the early stages of looking at potential sites for new affordable housing. Of course, I absolutely recognise the need for other forms of affordable housing in London, particularly for key workers who keep our essential local services running. In fact, we have delivered nearly 100 intermediate rent homes since 2022. There is always more to do, but make no mistake, this administration is improving the supply of good quality housing and building a better housing service. And we're doing it with residents, not just for them. That's the difference this administration is making, and we're going to keep going.
Thank you, Councillor Begum. That concludes the debate on the item chosen by the opposition group. Agenda item 13, notice of motion. The motion this evening has been submitted by the majority party and is entitled Supporting Private Renters. There will be a single debate on this motion, which is tabled on the order paper. I will then call the votes. As mentioned previously, the names of those down to speak are tabled on the order paper. Each speaker has up to 5 minutes. I now call Councillor Ellie Ormsby to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So I am absolutely delighted today to be speaking at my first full council as the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Renters on the work that this administration has done and will do to protect and empower private renters across Westminster. Before I do so, however, I would like to put on the record my thanks to my predecessor, Councillor Noble. All Westminster residents deserve decent, safe and secure housing, which is a cornerstone of building a fairer Westminster. Councillor Noble has done a formidable job in driving this forward. For the many thousands of renters who privately rent in Westminster and the thousands of families in the housing waiting list who are waiting for a council home which Councillor Noble has now set in motion to build. I am incredibly grateful to be taking on a portfolio which has the potential to improve and transform the lives of so many across the borough, and I look forward to carrying on Councillor Noble's good work with the team of dedicated officers who have made this administration's political vision a reality. But I will start with my speech. So, Westminster has the largest private rented sector in England, with over 44% of households renting privately. However, many of the private rented homes in Westminster have fallen below acceptable standards for too long, and many tenants are unaware of their rights when faced with issues such as damp, disrepair, unfair treatment and unlawful rent increases. The private rented sector remains the least affordable, poorest quality and most insecure form of housing. Over 6,500 private rented properties in Westminster are likely to have at least one serious housing hazard, resulting in our PRS team receiving nearly 4,000 complaints and service requests from private tenants over a 5-year period. This is all while rents have steadily increased, with a cost of a one-bedroom flat going up by 15% between 2023 and 2025. Knowing this, we've been doing everything within our power to support private renters, and have expanded our private renters sector strategy with an ambitious new action plan for the year. As part of that, we have launched 2 of our most recent initiatives, the Private Rented Sector Tenants Charter and our Selective Licensing Scheme. Firstly, the Charter. This document outlines the key standards that should be maintained in privately rented homes. It's designed to help renters better understand their rights and also their responsibilities. It sets out clear information on key issues such as damp and mould, unlawful evictions and unfair rent practices. It also provides information on how tenants can access advice and support locally if things aren't right. It sits on the council website and over 400 hard copies have been distributed for our partner organisations. Secondly, the Selective Licensing Scheme. which covers 15 of Westminster's 18 wards and aims to raise housing standards by requiring all landlords, except those already covered by the mandatory or additional licensing scheme, to hold a licence, and committing them to specific enforceable standards. Landlords will pay for this licence, and the funding available from this will ensure the proposed scheme is fair, well-structured and properly resourced. The scheme will enable a coordinated, multidisciplinary approach to tackling antisocial behaviour, provide support for landlords in dealing with problem tenants and property management issues, and help to identify and address links between properties and organised crime or modern slavery. Licensing also helps provide oversight and ensures accountability of the local housing stock, which is particularly important in Westminster, where close to 10,000 properties are owned by offshore companies and where day-to-day management is often delegated to multiple agents, some of whom operate unethically. And we know that a scheme like this works. Since the launch of the additional licensing scheme in 2021, over 1,000 HMOs have been improved by removing hazards through licensing conditions. And we know that enforcement works. Across all rental properties last year, nearly 400 serious Category 1 hazards were removed from properties to make them safe by our enforcement officers. And so far this year, we have issued 28 financial penalties to landlords and agents for failing to make their properties compliant. But before the minority party ask, what about all those good landlords who operate in Westminster? It is true that the majority of landlords operate with the right intentions, and we do want to recognise that. So that's why our reforms will not only benefit tenants, but also protect responsible landlords. And the National Residential Landlords Association agrees and has endorsed our residents' charter. Moreover, we have structured the licensing scheme to offer various licensing fee discounts, including incentives for accredited landlords and reductions for energy efficiency. Thankfully, we make these changes in tandem with a national government who finally takes this issue seriously. With the Renters' Rights Bill, we'll finally see the end to Section 21 no-fault evictions, and this will make a real difference for private renters in Westminster, many of whom are not able to easily enforce their existing rights due to the threat of eviction if they do so. So we commend the Labour government for taking decisive action where previous governments have failed. As a private renter myself, I'm very much looking forward to my newfound security, and I know that the 53,000 other private renters in Westminster will do so too. This is a cornerstone of our Fairer Westminster strategy, and with that, I propose this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Ormsby. Councillor Noble, to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And in seconding the motion, allow me to thank Councillor Ormsby for very kind words, but also to thank the teams that I worked with at the council whilst I was cabinet member. The regeneration team is staffed with a group of incredibly bright, dedicated, intelligent individuals who, frankly, we cannot do without. We can come up with the ideas, but it really takes their knowledge and understanding of the processes to get these things done. And I'm so glad that we have such a great team there. The renters team as well, the work that they did to get the selective licensing scheme through was a formidable task and one which they undertook with great zeal and success, and I'd like to express my deep thanks to them as well. The time that it's taken, in addition to that it's taken for the Renters' Rights Bill to make its way to this stage in Parliament, did give us the opportunity to really fine-tune the private renter sector charter, working in collaboration with the Council's Private Renter Sector Strategy Group. I'd like to particularly thank the work of Z2K and the renters that they involved in the process to make huge improvements on the drafts that we were producing of the Renters' Charter it was going through. And we really couldn't have done it without them. On the selective licensing scheme, we too worked with many different organisations. We held sessions with landlords, we held sessions with tenants. Of course, not everyone was in favour of doing this, but it was pleasing also that one of the initial conversations that we had in a P&S strategy group was one where the minority party asked us if we could make the licensing fee more. So we decided to, being the fair party that we are, to reject that notion and stick with £995 over 5 years. But it's important to note that even with the benefits that landlords will get from this scheme, the poor landlords will be paying their part, not just in the fact that they're going to have a license, but also that they will be fined when they don't comply with the scheme rules. And we've seen how that works across different councils in London, and so it will fully pay for itself, and we look forward to seeing the improvements that it will bring. The work that this council is doing, plus the Renters' Rights Bill, it's not a press conference. The work that we're all doing together will. It's like Angela as well. Why would I talk about Angela? Are you obsessed with Angela Rayner? It's weird.
Come on, now let's get on with it. Carry on, Councillor.
The work that we're doing together with the impact of the Renters' Rights Bill is really going to have a massive impact on a sector of the housing system which is often seen, particularly in Westminster, as being transient and difficult to pin down. But with people in the PRS increasingly becoming older residents, particularly in Westminster, it's important that we really start to focus more on the needs that they have. It's not just younger people on their way up the housing ladder. It's increasingly becoming the part of the housing market where people may well continue to live their lives until they pass on. I'd like to just also, I guess, encourage Councillor Ormsby and also central government to look at the next challenge, which is the kind of elephant in a room in a way, which is that the major issue that faces the PRS at the moment is affordability. And until we are able to get stronger action on the affordability of the private rented sector, not just here but everywhere across London, we can do all these things and they will have a great impact. Affordability is the number one concern of tenants in the PRS, and I think that we should really focus on that as the next big challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noble. Councillor Eagleton. Yes, Councillor Swaddle.
Yes, I'd like to move the point of order, please. I think I've had enough of this self-congratulatory trot.
Can you tell me which standing order?
I can.
Thank you. Well, please.
9.12, open brackets 1, close brackets K.
Thank you.
The question now put. And the reason I wish to ask that is because we're going to have another 20 minutes of this rubbish. And you've
Not
already
that good.
done it. Congratulations, well done. Thank you. You're already doing the actions. No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. What you've done, you've already got on with it. You've done the motion. You've actually enacted it, and you are publicising it. And this motion congratulates yourself for enacting it and for publicising it.
Thank you, Councillor Swaddle. I'm now going to, you've put the motion. Is it seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Those in favour of the motion, please show. Those opposed to the motion, please show.
Of course you can vote.
Is that done? The motion is lost. Councillor Robert Eagleton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. But before I start, can I just apologise again to yourself and also Councillor Swaddle for what I said at the end of my supplementary question. It was, I was thrown by the heckle, and I shouldn't have said it. I've worked closely with you on the ratings panel, and I shouldn't have said it was stupid. Can I thank Councillor Ormsby for...
It's not going to be fair.
Can I thank Councillor Ormsby for her characteristically forensic account of the crisis facing private renters in our city, a crisis whose severity, malignancy and scale cannot be overstated, and the actions that this council is taking to end the crisis and build a fairer Westminster. Councillor Harvey was right when he said earlier that housing is a difficult issue, and the crisis in the private rented sector and its deplorable features, precarity, high costs and poor maintenance, can often feel like the proverbial hydra, multi-headed, invincible
and impervious to the reforms of policymakers. But from what I've heard today and the actions being taken by this Labour Council, Labour Mayor and Labour Government, I believe we're entering a moment where we can sever the heads of this crisis. Tenants' lack of knowledge, under-regulation and high rental costs. Firstly, we need to empower Westminster's 53,000 private renters and ensure they are fully aware of their rights. Unscrupulous landlords prey on tenants not knowing statutory safeguards around deposit protection, rent increases, evictions, and landlord safety responsibilities. Locally, through the promotion of the Tenants' Charter and the selective licensing regime, the Council's private sector housing team is working hard to give residents and tenants the knowledge and tools they need to enforce their rights. But knowing your rights only goes so far. Private renters still face eye-watering rents, and even when tenants are aware that their rights are being violated, they're often too scared to raise a complaint because they fear eviction. The current system is stacked against renters who have minimal protections and who are in desperate need of the safeguards offered by the government's Renters' Rights Bill, which will finally end no-fault evictions and punitive rent increases. But there is a reason why the private rented sector is best compared to a hydra. For those like Councillor Butler-Philasis who know their Greek mythology, and for the rest of us who have watched Disney's adaptation of Hercules, we know that when one head is severed, one problem solved, another soon emerges. And this is pertinent because while the private rented sector is plagued by market failure, it is fundamentally a market. Empowerment are crucially needed and will eliminate some of the private rented sector's worst abuses. In isolation, there is a risk that landlords will pass on any increased compliance costs to tenants or will leave the market altogether, which, while good for buyers, would place upward pressure on rents. So like Hercules, we must do more than cut off the heads of this crisis. We must strike at its source. And that means building more housing, because only by increasing supply across all tenure types can we lower rents, offer tenants real choice, and end the circumstances which allow rogue landlords to operate. And that's why we need to support the government's ambition to build 1.5 million new homes by 2029, liberalise planning law, and take on the vested interests in NIMBYism. Councillor Noble did a tremendous job in this respect, and Councillor Shearer was asking for figures. Councillor Noble secured over £70 million in additional funding from the Greater London Authority to finance affordable homes in Westminster and transform the regeneration schemes we inherited. In her new role, I urge Councillor Ormsby to follow Councillor Noble's lead and to work with her Cabinet colleagues to leverage the regeneration brief to build as much housing as possible. I'm sure she will. She's a formidable councillor, and I look forward to supporting her and all the exciting projects she oversees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eagleton. Councillor Albert.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. If you're renting privately in Westminster, your rent can be sky high whilst your rights can be in the basement. This motion puts power back into the hands of renters who have for too long felt powerless when things go wrong. This motion recognises behind every stat and plan is a resident. Let's start with the Charter. It's not just about enforcement, it's about giving people the necessary tools. That's why I'm proud of our private rented sector Tenants' Charter. For too long, renters didn't know where to turn. This Charter changes that. It gives clear rights, clear expectations, a clear pathway to challenge poor conditions and bad practice. It's a sign that this Labour-run Westminster Council is standing up for renters. Now to licensing. The Tory scheme from 2021 was a false start. It was narrow, focused only on HMOs. It left thousands of renters exposed in other types of properties without meaningful protection or oversight. This license isn't just about raising the standard of housing in our city. It's about safety and community. starting with the basics: a home that's warm, safe, and fit to live in. This licensing scheme allows for a joined-up, multi-agency approach. It gives clear guidance, supports landlords to manage difficult tenancies. It enforces accountability, and it creates a level playing field that weeds out bad landlords and agents. This motion gives an eviction notice for the bad habits of rogue landlords, those who exploit tenants while avoiding their responsibilities, those who have gone unchallenged for too long. That era is ending in Westminster. This also gives the landlords who maintain their properties, respect their tenants, and honour the social contract a badge of honour. It says they meet the standards, they do things right. Because more than regulation, this is about hope. We cannot talk seriously about public health, education, opportunity, if people are breathing in mould, living in cold, unsafe, damp homes. Housing is health. Poor housing contributes to asthma, anxiety, childhood illnesses, depression, isolation, and it widens the health inequality gap. This motion is another opportunity to reduce health inequalities and improve people's life chances. This is real reform, and it will make a real difference. Labour-run Westminster is clear. This has to change, because behind every neglected rented home are residents stuck in a situation they did not sign up for. I've had casework come through that has made my heart sink. I think of a family who went without heating and hot water for months, a landlord who ignored them, and a council with no real power to resolve this with haste or intervene properly. That changes now. We are correcting a failure of political will. Let's remember, this didn't happen by accident. The Conservatives ran Westminster Council for decades. While renters pleaded for safety, they didn't deliver. While mould and damp spread, they ignored them. And while antisocial behaviour took hold in unregulated homes, they looked away. No real licensing scheme for thousands of renters, no accountability for rogue landlords, no urgency to act. Not anymore. I say this with full conviction. Failure has cost people their health, their money, and their peace of mind. We have a moral responsibility and duty to fix that. Licensing is part of that fix. We are changing things by showing what real leadership looks like, not with slogans like City for All that were mere words, but by getting things done. We have heard the thousands of people who rent in Westminster. We have heard the harrowing experiences. We're doing something about it. And for the future renters in Westminster, we are laying foundations for a safer, fairer renting future. Today, with this motion, we take this step. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Albert. Councillor Swaddle?
Here, here. Lord Mayor, this, and I'll keep it brief. Lord Mayor, this motion doesn't enact anything. This motion is pointless. It's just a piece of self-congratulation by the Labour Party. The motion doesn't bring forward the selective licensing scheme. That has already been done. It doesn't promote the selective licensing scheme because it's already planned to be promoted. We've been told about it. Therefore, this motion has no meaning. This council and the Labour Party could have chosen to debate any topic they wanted and bring forward future plans and initiatives to deliver. They haven't. What they've done is spent 40 minutes or 35 minutes self-congratulating themselves and plan to do so for another 10.
Good, because no one else
I will not waste any more of this Chamber's time. We will be abstaining from the motion as it serves no purpose.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Angela Piddock.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As councillors, we have responsibility for all our residents, and that includes the significant number of people living in privately rented accommodation. People may be living in rented accommodation for a variety of reasons, and the often negative connotations renting has in the UK are not shared in Europe. And indeed, long ago, most people in London lived in some form of rented accommodation. However, there are now downsides to renting in terms of both security and quality of housing. And these need addressing, and that is what we are doing. It's important to understand how integral good housing, and thus good private renting, is for the health of a community, not just for those who experience it, but also for the whole population of Westminster. Insecure housing stops people from being able to put down the roots that hold communities together. Forming friendships, developing support networks, and playing a positive role in your community are incredibly difficult to achieve if you don't know how long you're going to be around. The effect on children and young people of insecure housing is particularly damaging. In order to achieve, children and young people need a safe, secure environment where they can develop long-lasting relationships, which are a vital part of a child's development. Having to constantly change schools is not conducive to learning and can lead to poor attendance and low attainment. Feelings of insecurity can lead to behavioural and emotional problems, putting a strain on all our resources. A child who is constantly the new kid on the block is not usually a happy child. But if people know they are becoming part of a community for a decent amount of time, they're more likely to support initiatives to improve their environment, take part in local clubs and organisations, and invest energy in social activities. And as we've heard, equally important is the quality of those homes. Poor and unsafe conditions undermine the role a home plays in fostering connections and supporting people to contribute to their communities. The physical and emotional toll can harm mental health and increase social isolation. Being able to invite others into your home, to have somewhere safe and secure to shelter, provides the foundations needed to feel able to contribute outside it. Good, secure housing is the bedrock of a healthy society. With it, people are able to become part of a supportive network, to contribute and make a community a better place for all. It's the glue that underpins a healthy society from which we all benefit. That's why it is in everyone's interest to ensure that those living in privately rented homes are treated properly and have the security and safety a good home provides. We all know that fairer societies are safer, happier for everyone. What could be fairer than everyone having a home, whether owned or rented, where they feel safe? That's why I'm proud of the legislation and proposals outlined by a Cabinet Member for Housing and Renters. As has been said, we are committed to transforming the lives of all Westminster residents. These measures put in place by a Labour government and a Labour council will take us further along the road to a fairer society. They represent a major step forward for everyone in Westminster, something which I'm sure will be welcomed by everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Piddock. If nobody else wants to speak, I will call Councillor Ormsby to respond to the debate.
Yes, so thank you very much to my colleagues who have spoken so passionately and persuasively today. Thank you to Councillor Noble, who raises the issue of affordability. I agree, this is the next challenge we need to get after. And thank you to Councillor Eagleton. I also agree that we should be building more homes, and that's why we've identified 6 new sites for potential redevelopment across Westminster, as we've already spoken about this evening. However, I do disagree with you that our new licensing scheme, that the cost will be passed on to tenants, and let me just tell you why. So, the cost of a licence in the new selective licensing scheme is typically spread over a 5-year period, amounting to a relatively small cost per property of just £3.83 per week. The proposed fee is also in line with many other London councils with significantly lower property prices, including Lambeth, Southwark and Barking and Dagenham. It's a tax-deductible expense, and I firmly believe it will not materially impact the financial positions of landlords in Westminster, where the average weekly rent is £979 and 70% of properties are owned outright without a mortgage. It's therefore unlikely to be passed on to tenants in the majority of cases. Now we've clarified that, I am very disappointed that the minority party have obviously not properly engaged with this issue for their residents. It's a real shame that the leader of the minority party thinks this is rubbish and pointless. I wonder what their residents will think, many of whom are, of course, private renters, that they can't be bothered to talk about this with us. As we've discussed, you literally tried to stop the conversation.
I said it's already done.
Yeah, but do you support it?
Can we just...
You're not answering the question.
Let's have less banter, more speaking.
No.
Councillor Ormsby, please
As
continue.
we've discussed, one of the key issues we have is a lack of knowledge and awareness in the tenant community. And that's why this motion is so important. Because once again, we need to keep talking about this issue and raising the awareness of tenants' rights so tenants can understand it.
You tell us what your position is.
Thank you.
As Councillor Albert and Councillor Piddock brought to life for us, the changes we put forward today will make a real impact. However, the job is not done. Over the next few months, we'll be actively publicising and promoting the Charter and the selective licensing scheme to both tenants and landlords across Westminster. We will work to ensure that landlords have the information, guidance and support they need to register for the scheme and meet the required standards to ensure a smooth implementation of the scheme from November. And to do so, we are investing in increased numbers of environmental health officers to enforce standards, work with landlords and protect renters using the income to be raised by the scheme. We will also continue to work with tenants to ensure they can utilise the Charter as a key tool to empower them with the knowledge they need to secure safe and decent housing. We will also be supporting the Labour government's reforms to the private rented sector and work with our tenants and landlords to ensure any new powers brought about by the Renters' Right Bill are enforced. I, for one, am looking forward to seeing the difference this will have on the ground for residents in all of our wards, and it is a shame the minority party will not be supporting the motion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ormsby. As no amendment has been submitted, we will now vote on the motion as laid out in the agenda by a show of hands. So, those in favour of the motion? Okay. Those against? Those abstaining? I declare the motion carried. We now move to voting on the two reports listed on the agenda. The first vote is on the recommendations of the report listed under agenda item 11 and entitled Constitutional Changes. The recommendations are deemed to have been moved and seconded. By a show of hands, can I ask those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? I declare the recommendations approved. We will now move on to the vote on the recommendations of the report listed under agenda item 12 and entitled Member Allowances 2025 to 2026 Amendment. The recommendations are deemed to have been moved and seconded. By a show of hands, can I ask those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? I declare the recommendations approved. That concludes the council meeting. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and good night.